Step into a world where history doesn't just sit quietly in the past. It whispers, it questions, and sometimes it refuses to be understood. In the shadows of ancient cliffs, the walls of Pictograph Cave State Park still carry drawings made thousands of years ago. Strange human figures, powerful animals, and symbols that feel more like messages than simple art. Were these early humans telling stories, marking sacred ground, or trying to connect with something beyond our world? And then, not far from there, another discovery changes everything. The Anzick Clovis Burial. The grave of a young child, carefully laid to rest with tools and covered in red ochre. A burial so old, yet so emotional, it feels familiar even today. Why was this child given such importance? And what does it reveal about the first people who lived here? Two places, two mysteries. One speaks through images, the other through silence. Together, they tell a story of belief, loss, and the deep human need to be remembered. Pictograph Cave meanings. Have you ever stood in front of something so old, so silent, that it almost feels like it's watching you back? Not a person, not an animal, a wall. A cave wall covered in strange red drawings, figures that don't move but somehow feel alive. Shapes that no one can fully explain. Messages left behind thousands of years ago by people who never imagined we would be here, trying to understand them. Today, we're stepping into the mystery of pictograph caves, the hidden language of ancient humans. What did these drawings really mean? Were they stories, warnings, or something far more unsettling? Because once you start looking closely, these caves stop feeling like art and start feeling like communication. Deep inside rocky cliffs and quiet valleys around the world, there are caves where time feels frozen. The air is still, the light barely reaches the walls. And yet, on those walls, there are marks, red, black, sometimes white, painted using natural colors made from earth, charcoal, and even blood. These are called pictographs. Unlike carvings, they were painted, and they have survived for thousands of years. One famous example is the caves near what we now call Pictograph Cave State Park. When people first entered these caves, in modern times, they didn't just find random drawings. They found scenes. Humans with outstretched arms, animals in motion, strange symbols that look like stars, or eyes, or something in between. At first, it seemed simple. Maybe these were hunting records. Early humans showing what animals they chased and caught. A kind of ancient diary. But the more experts studied them, the more confusing things became. Because many of the drawings didn't match real life. Some animals were drawn much larger than humans, far bigger than they should be. Some figures had long, unnatural limbs. Others looked like they were wearing masks or had faces that weren't fully human. So the question changed. What if these weren't just records? What if they were messages? Think about it. These early people didn't have written language the way we do now. No alphabets, no books. But they still needed to share ideas, important ideas, things they wanted others to remember. So they painted. And what they chose to paint might tell us what mattered most to them. In many pictograph caves, animals appear again and again. Bison, deer, horses. But they're not always shown being hunted. Sometimes they stand alone. Sometimes they face the viewer directly, almost like they're being honored. Some researchers believe these paintings were part of rituals, ceremonies meant to connect humans with nature. The animals weren't just food, they were spirits, guides, something sacred. So painting them wasn't just art, it was respect, it was belief. But then there are the human figures. And this is where things get strange. In some caves, human shapes are drawn with lines coming out of their heads, like rays or energy. Others seem to float. Some have no faces at all. These aren't normal scenes of daily life. They feel different. One theory suggests these figures represent shamans, people who acted as spiritual leaders in ancient groups. During rituals, they may have entered trance-like states, where they believed they could travel between worlds. The drawings could be what they saw, not with their eyes, but with their minds. Imagine standing in a dark cave, lit only by flickering firelight. A shaman dances, chants, maybe breathes in smoke from burning plants. Their mind shifts, their senses change. And in that moment, they see something. Something powerful enough to paint on a wall so others could witness it too. If that's true, then pictographs aren't just pictures, they are visions. But not everyone agrees. Some believe these drawings could also be warnings. Signs left behind to mark dangerous places, sacred areas, or even territories belonging to certain groups. Think of them like ancient do not enter signs. And if you look closely at some of the symbols, sharp lines, repeating patterns, strange shapes, you can almost imagine them carrying hidden meanings, messages that made perfect sense to the people who created them, but are now lost to time. There's also another possibility, one that feels simple, but is just as mysterious. What if they were stories? Not warnings, not rituals, just stories. Stories of hunts, of survival, of strange events that happened long ago, passed down not by words, but by images. Like a comic book carved into stone. But even that raises questions, because stories usually follow a clear order. A beginning, a middle, an end. Many pictograph rules don't. They feel scattered, overlapping, as if different people came back again and again, adding new pieces over generations. Which means what we see today isn't one story. It's many stories, layered, mixed together. And that makes it harder to understand, but also more powerful, because it shows something deeply human, the need to leave a mark, to say, I was here, to share something, anything, that might outlast your own life. Now, let's talk about how these caves feel today. If you visit a place like Pictograph Cave State Park, you won't be walking into a hidden, untouched world anymore. There are paths, signs, safety rails. The caves are protected, carefully monitored. That's the positive side. These ancient drawings are being preserved. Experts are studying them using modern tools. We are learning more than ever before about early human life. But there's also a negative side. Time is still winning. Even with protection, the paintings are fading. Wind, moisture, and temperature changes slowly erase them. Some have already disappeared completely. And then there's human impact. Long ago, before strict rules were in place, some visitors touched the walls, scratched their own marks, eating to pieces as souvenirs, damage that can never be undone. So today, when you stand in front of these pictographs, you're not just looking at history, you're looking at something fragile, something that might not exist for and know what it means for the experience of giving and death. Because the more we try to understand these drawings, the more we realize how much we don't know. Even now, with all our technology, all our research, we still can't fully translate what these ancient people were trying to say. We can guess, we can build theories, but the true meaning, that might be gone. Or it might still be there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to finally see it differently. And maybe that's what makes pictograph caves so fascinating. They don't give clear answers, they give questions. They make you wonder, who were these people really? What did they believe? What did they see in those dark caves that made them pick up pigment and start painting? And the biggest question of all, if you were standing there thousands of years ago, in that same cave, what would you have painted? Because in the end, these walls are more than just stone. They are voices, very old voices, still speaking in a language we almost understand. But not quite. And maybe that mystery is the message itself. Today, places like Pictograph Cave State Park stand as both a window into the past and a reminder of how fragile history is. On the positive side, they are protected, studied, and respected. People from all over the world visit to learn and experience something ancient and real. On the negative side, natural damage continues, and human carelessness in the past has already caused loss that cannot be repaired. In my opinion, pictograph caves are not just about history, they are about connection. They remind us that humans, no matter how different in time, always wanted to express, to believe, and to be remembered. But if we don't protect these places properly, we might lose the chance to ever understand them better. Present situation. The caves are preserved and open to visitors with strict protection rules. But the pictographs are slowly fading due to natural and past human damage, making their future uncertain. Anzick Clovis Burial. What if I told you that one of the oldest human burials ever found in North America belonged to a child? Not a warrior, not a king. A small boy, carefully placed into the earth over 12,000 years ago. And he wasn't buried alone. He was surrounded by tools, beautiful, sharp, perfectly made tools, all covered in a deep red powder, as if someone wanted to mark this moment forever. Why would ancient people give such importance to a child? And what did that red color really mean? This is the mystery of the Anzick Clovis Burial, a discovery that changed what we thought we knew about early humans in America. It all began in the late 1960s, not in a grand excavation, but by accident. Workers were digging on private land near a rocky area in Montana. At first, it seemed like just another work site. Dirt, stones, nothing unusual. But then, something appeared. Bones. Small bones. And alongside them, tools. Not just any tools. These were Clovis tools. Some of the oldest and most advanced stone tools ever found in North America. Sharp spear points, carefully shaped blades, objects that took skill, time, and patience to create. And they were all covered in a strange red substance. Later, scientists identified it as ochre, a natural pigment made from iron-rich earth. Deep red, almost like dried blood. Right away, this raised questions. Why cover tools in ochre? Why place them with a child? Because the bones, after study, were revealed to belong to a young boy, around 1 to 2 years old. That alone is powerful. Think about it. In a time when survival was hard, when every day was a struggle, losing a child would have been common. But this burial, this wasn't simple. This was careful, intentional. Someone took time to place the boy in the ground. Someone arranged the tools around him. Someone covered everything in red ochre, as if it meant something more than just decoration. It felt like a ritual. And that changes everything. Because it tells us that these early people, the Clovis culture, were not just hunters trying to survive. They had emotions, beliefs, possibly even ideas about life and death. Now, let's talk about those tools. There were over 100 stone and bone artifacts found in that burial. Some were complete, others were partially finished. It's almost like someone gathered both their best work and their unfinished work and placed it all together. Why? One idea is that these tools were offerings, gifts for the afterlife. Maybe they believed the child would need them wherever he was going. Or maybe the tools represented something else, a connection, a way of saying, you belong to us. You carry our story. And then there's the ochre. This red pigment appears in many ancient burials around the world. It's not random. It shows up again and again, across different cultures and times. So what does it mean? Some believe ochre symbolized life, or blood, or rebirth. Covering the body and objects in red might have been a way of honoring life, even in death. Others think it could have been protective, a way to guard the spirit, or mark the burial as sacred. But here's where things get even more interesting. For a long time, scientists argued about who these early Clovis people really were. Where did they come from? Were they the first humans in America? The Anzick burial gave us a clue. Decades after the discovery, scientists were able to study the DNA from the child's remains. And what they found was surprising. The boy was closely related to modern Native American populations. That means this wasn't some lost, unknown group. This child, this ancient burial, is directly connected to people still living today. And that makes the site even more important, because it's not just history, it's ancestry, it's identity. But this discovery also raised difficult questions. Who has the right to study these remains? Should they be kept in museums or returned to the descendants? Over time, discussions between scientists and Native American communities led to an important decision. The child would be reburied, respectfully, according to cultural traditions. Because while science can learn from the past, it also has a responsibility to respect it. Now, let's step back and look at the bigger picture. This burial is over 12,000 years old. That's a time we can barely imagine. No cities, no writing, no recorded history. And yet, here we have clear evidence of something deeply human. Grief, care, meaning. Someone, thousands of years ago, stood in that place, holding the body of a child, and chose to create something lasting. Not just a grave, but a message. A message that says, this life mattered. And that's what makes the Anzick Clovis burial so powerful. It breaks the idea that early humans were simple or emotionless. They weren't. They mourned. They remembered. But even with all this information, the mystery isn't gone. There are still things we don't understand. Why this child? Was he special in some way? Was his family important? Or was this kind of burial more common, and we just haven't found others yet? And what about the tools? Were they made specifically for him, or were they everyday objects given new meaning in death? We may never know for sure. And maybe that's part of what makes this story stay with you. Because it feels familiar, even after all this time. Loss hasn't changed. Emotion hasn't changed. Only the world around us has. Now, let's talk about the present situation at the site. The original location of the Anzick burial is not a public tourist attraction like many historical sites. It's on private land, and access is limited. That's actually a positive thing in many ways. It protects the site from damage, looting, and unnecessary disturbance. After all, this is not just an archaeological location. It's a burial ground, and it deserves respect. The artifacts found at the site have been carefully preserved and studied. helping researchers understand more about early human life in North America. The DNA research, in particular, has been a major breakthrough. But there are also negatives. Because the site is not fully open or widely accessible, many people don't know about it. Its importance is not as widely recognized as it could be. Also, like many ancient discoveries, the initial excavation happened at a time when rules and respect for human remains were not as strong as they are today. Some of the early handling of the burial would not be considered acceptable now. That part of the story is complicated. In my opinion, the Anzick Clovis burial is one of the most emotional discoveries in archaeology. Not because of how old it is, but because of how human it feels. It reminds us that even at the very beginning of human life in this land, people cared deeply for each other. But it also reminds us that we must balance curiosity with respect. Just because we can study something doesn't always mean we should, without limits. Present situation. The site remains protected on private land with limited access. The artifacts and research have provided major insights into early human history, and the child has been respectfully reburied. But public awareness remains limited, and past handling of the site raises ongoing ethical questions.